I guess everybody's looking at this stack that we have in front of us here, Brian, and I'm really responding to a number of the comments that were made by Egon von Greyerz, and that is that gold has been somewhat overlooked. We've gone from 5% basically 5% of the investments in gold globally to around 0.5 to 0.7 of 1%. Overlooked, and I know why. I mean, you have a look at real estate stocks, bonds, they're all marketed very heavily by governments, by mainstream media, and there's a lot of money in it for all of them.
They're very taxable.
Correct, 100%. So, but what we want to do right now, Brian, of course, is share some points with our viewers and our subscribers and talk about this stack that we've got here, because over the last 20 years, interestingly enough, gold has outperformed stocks, bonds and real estate aggressively. So our illustration is gold versus real estate. What I want to do really is talk about an investment in gold of around half a million, just to support what I'm saying, $500,000 worth of gold. And some people would say, well, that's a lot of money to invest. Yes, it is. But there are a lot of people out there, of course, that invest in properties, and they may have one property at $500,000 or 10 properties at $500,000. But so that's why I've selected that number. But it could be at $50,000 or $10,000. It doesn't matter. But let's start with $500,000, and let's in gold, and let's leave it put aside for 5 years. Gold has averaged 27.1% over the last 20 years, since 2000. So let's be conservative and call it 20%. Mm-hmm. So if you had an increase of 20% over a 5-year period, your $500,000 would now be worth $1 million in gold. Now you could liquidate at that point at 20% per annum. Infinitum. You would have less gold at the end of each year, but if the growth rate was 27.1%, I believe it'll be more than that over the next 20 years, because I think our economy is in a much worse, and I'm sure John would agree, where our economy is in a much worse position now than it has been for the last 20 years. So you could liquidate, let's keep that in mind, 20% per annum, and you could have less gold, but it'll be worth more
value
at the end of each year from that point onwards. Lovely retirement. Now, so what we've got here, now this looks a little bit like a house. We thought we did a pretty good job with it, didn't we, Mark? Yeah. But this is $1 million worth of gold. Perth Mint, 1 ounce gold bars. How convenient's that? You got $1 million sitting in front of you. You don't have to go out and buy a house, no maintenance, none of those things, no stamp duty, none of those things. So let's compare it to the house, what we've got here. If you had a house at $500,000, and let's say it grew at the rate of 20% per annum, which would be a fantastic 5-year period. But let's say it did that, you'd have $1 million property, wouldn't you?
Yes, certainly would.
Okay. So what would the return be on that $1 million property? Something like $40,000 if it was a rental property, about $40,000 a year before outgoings. Then let's consider you've got other costs incurred, council rates, of course, and you've got maintenance and major renos and all of that. So let's say that the return was more like $30,000 a year. So we're talking $200,000 a year with a gold investment.
20%, yeah.
20%, mm-hmm. $200,000 a year, infinitum, compared to a $30,000 a year return on a property investing the same amount. Now, to me, that's outstanding. And I learnt these numbers many years ago from a gentleman by the name of Peter Daniels, who shared that with me. And Brian and I, of course, took advantage of that wonderful information, and we've been saving in precious metals ever since. But Brian has something that we can add to that part of the presentation, just to highlight the real value in gold.
Yeah, like I put the figures together, what we've just been talking about, but I took it over an extension of 50 years, and that's in fact from 1971 when we actually went off the gold standard worldwide. So between 1971 and 2021. So 50 years, and the gold price is up 52 times. So $35 an ounce in 1971, right through to 1820 in 1921. Now, saying that, it's already up to 1900 a couple of months later, in 2022. So, but 50 years, 52 times. Now, I relate it to my Adelaide home. It's around about 10 minutes from here, and in my Adelaide home is 10 minutes from the CBD of Adelaide, and in the early 70s was valued at approximately 60,000 Australian dollars. If I multiply that by 52 times, we come to a figure of around 3.1 million for my home. Now, the present value, with lots of care and maintenance, it's going on all the time, it never stops, right? And extensions is approximately, right now, my home is valued at between 1.2 and 1.3 million. So you can see that slightly less than the 20%. Gold and silver, for that matter, has turned out to be a better purchase with no maintenance. Over time, precious metals will outshine because you cannot print gold. You can print money, and that's where the inflation starts. There you go.
No, look, it just makes so much sense. And hey, we can only, right now, more than any other time in history, it's important to have an alternative form of currency.
Yeah. We don't say you don't have real estate as an investment. Absolutely not. But you put a proportion back into silver and gold, and you'll get a reality check of how good it is to have it.
Once again, we talk about a balanced portfolio.
Absolutely.
That's really what we're saying.
Yeah.